Hi again! By now, you should have decided what project you'll want to use for your mock project that you'll use to work through the course. If you haven't, then you need to go back and get an idea. Now, don't get too attached to it though. You may have to adjust for the funding opportunities. But if you don't have a clear starting place, you'll get thrown off. And we will be searching online. And just like searching Google, you can't put just any words into a search. The better you pick your words, the better your results will be with online search. So, we'll be moving from project to starting our funding searches now. I mentioned in modules 0 and 1 that the government does a lot of funding of scientific and technological research. And because foundations are, on the whole, more interested in community engagement and less in science, we're going to start with searching for funding opportunities in the U.S. government. After that, we'll move to a database that should be available through your campus's sponsored programs office. The database will be called InfoEd Spin, and it should work on your campus because of your sponsorship by your sponsored programs office. But the government ones first. The search and other information is freely available to anyone with the internet, so no matter where you go, you'll have access to them. First, let's take a look at two of the most common U.S. governmental funding agencies, the National Institutes of Health, which are part of the Department of Health and Human Services, and the National Science Foundation, which is its own department. The National Institutes of Health, or NIH, are interested in anything having to do with human health and biomedical research. And the National Science Foundation, or NSF, is interested in a broad range of all non-medical scientific research. So, we're covering a lot of options with those two agencies. If you have a clear interest, like human health, then you should start by really getting into the relevant agency's website. You can look for grants on it, but you can also learn other things about them, like their strategic priorities. If you check the grants and funding part of the NIH website, you can see there's a link to funding opportunities. But there are other helpful links here, like applying electronically, or general links about grants. So there's a lot of very useful reading there. And the same goes for the NSF, which is going to be a very important site for most PSM students. Again, you'll see there's a link to search funding opportunities. But there is also information on their procedures, their review process, their policies, their grant application advice. Good stuff, huh? It's very useful. So, anytime you're interested in applying to a U.S. government agency, it's very much worth looking at their website to learn about them. If you're looking across topics, though, or if you want a central place to start your search, you can visit the grants.gov website at http://www.grants.gov. There is a ton of information here. And sometimes you'll submit your application on this website too, but that's for later on. For now, we want to go to the Search Grants area. You can see that you get a list of the most recently announced grants. Now, these are grants that are announced and confirmed for funding now. In the work world, we may often start an application for a grant even before it's confirmed for funding. So this list is not all of the possible grants you could apply to for work, but it's a good starting point. You see on the left, we have a box that says keyword, and then a couple for numbers. For our purposes, we'll be ignoring the number ones. They're mostly for when you already have a grant in mind and you want to pull it up fast. Under that, you can see that you can search closed or archived grant opportunities in case you want to look at past interests in your agency. Next down the list is funding instrument type. We are only going to look into grants in this class, so go ahead and check the grant checkbox. Each of the other types of funding instruments have their own rules, and we want to keep focused on grants. Under that, we have eligibility. And this is an important one because you can only apply to a grant that you or your employer is qualified for, eligible for, I mean. Anything else is a complete waste of your time because you won't get the grant. The government is very, very strict. You'll be hearing about that more later too. So, you're probably either going to work in industry and look at grants, for-profit organizations other than small businesses, or you'll go into work at a university research group, which is here as public and state-controlled institutions of higher education. You might look through the other options too, just in case any of them interest you. But check one or both of those choices, depending on which is what you want to work in, industry or academia, and then scroll to the bottom and add a check mark for unrestricted. There are boxes to limit the topic area or category and to limit to specific agency as well. You can feel free to use those if you want. I'll be leaving them off to get the most possible results. But if you have a hard to narrow down topic, like global warming, and you're trying to make sure to get a certain application area of that, like educational or agricultural or environmental, etc., then you may want to use those lower checks to help narrow it down. Okay, we're ready to go back up and pick our keyword. To be honest, this is the hard part. It will be the hard part no matter which engine you search in, because funding opportunities may approach things from a variety of angles. There are a lot of different ways to look at research studies, because they can lead to so many different long-term outcomes. That's one thing that complicates it. For example, understanding glucose, sugar, metabolism could help obesity or diabetes, or even be relevant to food science. And so I could search for any of those three areas. Another thing that complicates searching for grants is that the funding opportunities are usually written at a broader level than we write our questions, but you can't always predict broader in which way. So, I'm going to imagine that I study a specific bacterium, Geobacter sulfureducens, which naturally conducts electricity and also metabolizes soil pollutants. My interest is the research question, by what mechanism does this bacterium form its biofilms? So that's my research question. Now, I can search for my bacterium. No results. So let me broaden it up a bit. Let me just try bacteria generally. Now, some results. Okay, now let me tell you, computers are very stupid. Very stupid. So it's smart for you to provide the intelligence by trying similar words. What if I try bacterial, you probably saw that pop up, instead of bacteria? Twice as many results. Over one letter. Stupid, right? So, let's look at the worksheet we did last time too, for some more possible ideas. The first thing is field of study. In my example research question, the field of study is microbiology. So, let me try that. Because anything that funds research in microbiology is about bacteria. So it might have some relevant stuff. Yes, and here are some results too. So let me look again. What else is on my sheet? I didn't use all of the words in my research question yet. So let me try biofilms. Ooh, and there's results too. So that's another direction I could try to get some results with. Keep trying important words from your question. And let's think about some of the other things that you looked at in your worksheet. We asked, why is it important? Well, In mine, the electricity thing is an important possible implication, so I might search for bioelectricity. The soil pollution part is also a potential benefit, so let's search for that. Even more results. This is the most results I've gotten. So, some of the results we've seen did overlap between the searches, of course. But even if you don't understand my example topic, look at your worksheet. Can you follow my logic for how I pick different possible search words from the sections? Your discipline, your particular topic, words from your question, things about your implications, and your why factor. Also, variant words. Keep that bacterial thing in mind too. Once you have results, you can click on a funding opportunity number to see some basic information on this grant, this funding opportunity. The synopsis details tab is an important place to start. It gives you some ideas of what is going on with this grant. Then the Related Documents tab often has a link to the full grant announcement. That full announcement document is your mission. It's going to be key, the single most important thing you'll use to work on your application at this point. After a lot of experience, you may be able to go right to the application package, but we need to start with reading announcements. They have a lot of information and are complex to read. So, that's your goal, the announcement document. Mission complete. Okay, let's try that with NSF, with my same example. But since you've already heard me go through the reasons why I'm picking different terms, I won't go through all of them. Now, the NSF tends to go for broad areas because they cover a broad range of science. So let me try microbiology. And that gets me some. Let me try biofilms. One result. See, we're only pulling from one agency here, so we're going to get smaller groups of results. But you might have seen before that I had a lot of defense-oriented results that weren't ideal for this question either. So, anyway, let me try soil pollution. Whoa, lots of stuff. So, you see how the implications and problem you're solving can sometimes be more of a target sort of term than the question. Here, you click on the opportunity title, and that'll get you a page about it. This page is important. It tells you a lot of useful things like who the program officers are. We'll talk about why that's important later. The link to the solicitation is usually here where the number is, and you can pick a format to read it in, and then that opens the whole thing. Mission accomplished again. So, okay, you've got the idea and you've seen how some sites work. Even if you're not in one of these areas, maybe you're going into the digital humanities and really need to find a sponsor that's friendly for humanities. There's probably a government agency for you. For humanities, it's the National Endowment for the Humanities. The module will talk about more agencies, but what if you're not looking for a government agency? Well, while you're a UNC System PSM student, you should have access to InfoEdSpin, a funding search tool that the campuses cooperate to make available through their sponsored programs office. If you're on campus, try it now and see if you can access it at http:// spin.infoedglobal.com. It probably won't work off campus, but maybe your grants office or development office could help you. Otherwise, head into campus and it should work there. So in Spin, the keyword search is in the middle of the page, and you have a lot of options in the black bar menus. One of the most useful menus is the Preferences menu. Spin includes all sorts of funding, not just across sponsor types like government versus foundations versus nonprofits versus professional organizations, but also in many countries. So you can look at only opportunities that have a certain place for the researcher, or a certain place for the fieldwork, if that's different, or even particular citizenships. That last is a big deal for international researchers. Hi, international colleagues! But for now, for the PSM program context, let me set my applicant location to North Carolina. And then, like before, I pick terms I thought of from my research worksheet. Let me try biofilms. Yes, there's results. How about bacterial? Yep. Microbiology? Yep. So each of these did too. And see how the sponsors here are quite different from the ones that we saw in grants.gov. Also, see how the types of things are more varied, like this research visit grants? That wouldn't fund a research project, of course, but money to visit a lab in the UK. That won't help us. It looks like it's for established researchers. But I hope that you're thinking that Spin might be helpful to you in finding fellowships and internships. That'll be part of this unit, so watch for that later. And in Spin, the link to full information is under Sponsor Information and then Program URL. That's the mission goal here in this one. But let me go back by closing this pop-up window. Now, notice if you use Spin, you may need to unblock pop-ups temporarily if this display isn't showing up for you. But since that was so far off of what I want, it tells me that I might need to set my project type to just research. So let me come back to the menu bar and do that, because I don't actually want to do site visits. So maybe I can narrow it down. These don't really seem to be about soil bacteria. So let's go back to my core domain of interest as it's closest to my mock project question, biofilms. By the way, I'm thinking out loud here because these are the kinds of things you try, the way that you should think. Noodle around with it. Think about how to change and modify your terms. I know it's the start of the course, but the stages at the start here are the hardest in many ways. This process of matching your interests and abilities to a funding opportunity is like dating. Well, maybe better to say like a job hunt. Just like a job hunt where you're exploring alternate career routes and looking for different types of employers and opportunities. It gets complicated. Same here. So, biofilms. This biofilms, these are health related. But, hey, this one is mechanistic research. And my mock research question is mechanisms of biofilm formation. So, I wonder if my mechanism model, even though it's not in human microbes, would be of interest. Time to look at the solicitation and see what I can learn. So, hopefully you have the idea now. You spend a lot of time on this. You have to explore, get a feel for things. Revisit your question if you can't find things, but try to only revisit that question after you've got a good feel for what's out there and might match another area of interest. Don't just switch right away. Go back and forth a bit, and between opportunities and maybe possible research question variants. This is a critical stage, and one that gets easier, but never gets completely easy. All PIs have to struggle with this opportunity issue. Get a good, strong feel for what's out there in your field. I've heard it said, and I agree, that this is the hardest, but most critical stage. So, no skimping on this lesson. Practice, pull up some solicitations, and work through the lesson. Okay, thanks for listening. This is Nina, signing off. Lesson 2, identifying a sponsor and funding opportunity of the UNC Systems Professional Science Master's course on the fundamentals of grantsmanship.